Have you ever just stopped and wondered how you even start a conversation from scratch, especially in a new language? Well, today we're going to break down this really fascinating, super simple guide for that very first talk. Let's see how it works.
I mean, think about it. It's a situation we've all been in, right? You meet someone and there's that pause. What do you say? How do you, break the ice? It seems like such a tiny step, but man, it can feel like a huge jump, especially when you're not in your native language.
So the answer, or at least a really cool approach, comes from this little guide called Spoken English Today. We're looking at just one page from it, but this one page lays out a whole blueprint for how to build that first connection, step by step.
So the guide is really smart about this. It organizes the whole thing into these clear stages. And the first one? It's all about that initial handshake. Not a real one, but the exchange of basic info that lays the groundwork for everything else.
Okay, no big surprises here, right? It kicks off with the most essential building block of any introduction. What is your name? It's simple, it's direct, it's something everyone expects. But look closely at how the guide does it. It's a question, followed by a blank space for the learner to fill in their answer.
All right, now this is where it gets interesting. The very next question isn't, how are you? It's what are you? It's a really direct prompt to establish your role, your profession, your identity beyond just the name. It immediately adds a whole new layer of context to the chat.
So what's the big idea here? Well, this opening move is pretty brilliant in its simplicity. You establish a basic identity with a name, you create instant context with a role, like student, doctor, whatever, and most importantly for a learner, these are simple, low-stakes questions. It's all about building confidence right from the get-go.
Okay, so after you've established who you are, the conversation naturally moves on to where you are. The guide actually helps the learner create a kind of mental map for the person they're talking to. It's a really neat idea. And the anchor for this whole section is another really straightforward question. Where do you live? It's just the next logical piece of the puzzle, right? It grounds the person in a specific place on that mental map.
But here's the thing. The guide doesn't just stop there. It gets that a place is way more than just a name. So it pushes the learner to flesh things out with more details, to turn a simple one-word answer into a much richer picture.
And this is how it builds a whole world around that one location. It asks about your origins. To which place do you belong? It helps establish a sense of scale, using a well-known city as a reference point. How far is it from Delhi? And then it dives right into culture and community with questions about what people do there and what language they speak. See? The learner isn't just giving a fact, they're actually painting a picture.
So, we've gone from names and places, public information, and now the guide pivots to the personal. This is where the conversation really starts to deepen, moving from general facts to someone's unique, individual story.
And the way it eases into this is with a question about background and achievements. What is your educational qualification? This opens up the conversation to personal history, to studies, to all the experiences that have shaped who you are.
And here it is. This is the key that really unlocks the most personal part of the conversation. Could you tell me something about your family? It's not a demand, it's a polite invitation to share something a bit more intimate and meaningful.
In this slide, this just perfectly shows the guide's whole method. It doesn't just ask a tough question and then leave the learner hanging. It provides these scaffolds, these sentence starters like ours is a or we are. It's a classic teaching trick that gives the learner a structure to build on, making a really complex and personal answer feel so much more manageable.
Okay, so we've walked through the whole structure of this first conversation. Now let's just step back for a second and look at the teaching method itself. What's the secret sauce here? What makes this simple little guide actually work? It really boils down to this call and response method. First, the guide poses a common, real-world question. Then, and this is so important, it provides that blank space. This forces the learner to actively think and formulate their own answer, not just repeat something they memorized. Over time, this process builds what you could call conversational muscle memory.
And after all this practice, after all the questions and the blank spaces, the guide doesn't end with the grade. It doesn't give you a test. The final note is just one of pure, powerful encouragement, which, as anyone who's tried to learn something knows, is absolutely vital. It just ends with, very good. And then you see the message in Hindi on the screen. It translates to, your dedication and hard work are in the right direction. Keep at it with this same firm resolve. Your success is assured. Wow. That's not just a closing statement. It's genuine validation of your effort. It's pure motivation. You know, we always hear that phrase, practice makes perfect. But this little guide seems to have a better question. What makes for perfect practice? And it suggests the answer isn't just mindless repetition. It's about structured, supportive, and encouraging interaction that builds not just your language skills, but a real human connection. So, something to think about. What does perfect practice look like for the skills that you're trying